Well, good morning, everybody. All right. So I need everyone to do me a favor. Take out your phone. This is not a trick. Take out your phone. Take out your phone. This isn't a gotcha. Take out your phone. Take out your phone. All right. So I need your help. I am 100% sure this works on an iPhone. I have not found anyone. I walked around and asked many of you if you own an Android, didn't find one person. So I'm going to assume that this works for an Android. Okay, yeah. Well, yeah, Mark, yeah, never mind. Okay. So here is what I need you to do. So there is a feature on your phone. If you're watching online, you do this too. Take out your phone. Not if you're driving. Anyway, you shouldn't be watching if you're driving anyways. But if you're listening, anyway, moving on. So here's what I want you to do. If you hold down the bottom of your screen and just push up, you're going to see all of the apps that are currently open on your phone. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to, as I'm talking, close them all, but count. I want you to count how many you have open. So go ahead. You and count, and this number might be embarrassing. Some of you are not. Oh, yeah. Grady has what's called a cool pad. It's a flip phone. Flipping. Oh my goodness. I saw one hand. I'll let you keep going. You sick person. $15, $20, $25, $30. No, get proud. Who's still in? Who's still in? Over 35. Okay. You had a hand up. Auctioneer voice. I don't know. 56. So much judgment. Did you feel that emotionally? Tori? Oh, yeah, not as bad as that guy. Yeah, way better. Okay, so my goodness. So I did this with a number of people. The highest one I came across was 81. 81. I don't even have 81 apps on my phone. But 81 apps. Okay. So if you read stories, performance things from Apple or Android, what they will tell you is leaving open all of those apps. Some of you just learned a new feature, and you can go home and be like, I learned something, and don't say I never taught you something at church. That leaving those open, running in the background all the time, leads to two things: poor performance and a drained battery. Poor performance and a drained battery. Some of you don't have to take the huge leap of where I'm going. The amount of distractions that we have in our life are the same for you and I. The amount of things that you are splitting your attention to lead to you not feeling like you are moving forward in life, accomplishing anything, moving after what God has for you, poor performance, and you're just worn out all the time. Just tired all the time. And when people ask you, how's it going? You go, another day. You say dumb stuff like that because you're just exhausted at every moment. As we've been looking in this series, we started last week, and I'll just give you a little kind of update to get us all up to speed. Last week, we talked about attention and how our attention has the ability to undermine our intention. That you can have all the best intentions in the world, but if you're not focused on paying attention to the thing that is right in front of you that God has for you to do, then you are going to ultimately lose traction in your life. And some of you, at this very moment, in this season of life, feel like you are losing traction. I mean, it's literally in the word, distraction. You have a lack of traction. and you're just moving as fast as you possibly can, but you're not going anywhere, or you're not going nearly as quickly or smoothly or aggressively as you had hoped. We looked last week at a story of Nehemiah, and we're going to continue in the book of Nehemiah. So if you have a Bible with you, you can go ahead and open there. If you don't have one and would like one, we have some physical ones at each door. Grab it, take it. If you don't own one, take it with you. It's our gift to you. But to bring you up to speed, so Nehemiah was, when Jerusalem was sacked by the Babylonians, he was taken into custody. Then eventually the Persians came and took over, and Cyrus had no need for all of these Israelites who were enslaved and in captivity. And so he allowed a few of them to be led by Zerubbabel to go back to Jerusalem to begin to rebuild their homeland. At this point in time, Nehemiah had worked his way up into the top tier of government, where he was a cupbearer to the king. He was the right-hand man for King Cyrus. And they switched leadership over a few times while Nehemiah was there. But eventually, he has what we saw last week in Nehemiah 1:3. If we could go to that, where he said, "The remnant there in the province who had survived the exiles in great trouble and shame. The wall of Jerusalem is broken down and its gates are destroyed by fire." That was the update that he was given. Things are not well. Your homeland is burned down. It is destroyed. It's not moving forward. They've lost traction. And so it builds within him this holy discontent, this frustration, this angst, this, I've got to go do something about this. And where we ended last week was this slide. We talked about that it is at the intersection of these three things. A problem for Nehemiah, it was that the walls and the gates of Jerusalem were destroyed. His people and his town were in ruins. They had no leadership. They had no vision. They weren't able to move forward in what God had for them. That there was a possibility that something might be different. It didn't always have to be that way. And a passion. And we said the same is true for you and I, that we have a lot of problems in our lives, things that come up, things that cause us to be distracted or lose traction in our life. There's a possibility for things to be different, for things to go in a different direction, for things to get a different kind of pace or maybe traction, and then a passion. As I said last week, there are many things that are going on in this world. There are many things that are going on in this community. There are many things that are going on in your family. And a few of those things really get your attention. Most of those things you're like, man, that sucks. And then you just move on with your life. But other things captivate you. Other things grab you. Other things draw you in to go, you know what? It shouldn't be that way. Things shouldn't exist like that. For me, a lot of that has always centered around when things are not going well with kids. It's why I try to get so invested with like youth coaching and sports and stuff, because my heart is drawn to when things go. It's why we do Give Love. It's just when kids are involved, there's just a different level. When adults want to screw up their life, that's fine. That's, people make choices. But when kids suffer the consequences of adults who make bad choices, that is, for me specifically, that is something that has captured my passion and affection. And so we see at the intersection is what Nehemiah is struggling with. And we talked about this last week, that is what he goes back for. So he goes back, and it doesn't particularly go well. It goes okay, but it fizzles over time. But then Nehemiah shows up after Zerubbabel and Ezra, now Nehemiah, and he gets a little bit of traction. He gets so much traction that it gains the ire of the people around him, who try to tell him, stop what you're doing. You need to come down off the wall. And then they start rumors about him, and then they threaten to kill him. And we ended last week with this very poignant section in chapter 6, verse 3, where this is Nehemiah's response. I'm doing a great work, and I can't come down. I'm doing a great work, and I can't come down. Why should the work stop while I leave it and come down to you? You are a distraction. You are pulling me away. You are changing my vision. Why would I go be distracted with that when God is calling me to this? And so that's where we ended last week. So we'll pick up right from there. So in the same way, as people surrounded Nehemiah and were speaking all kinds of voices and distractions into his life, it happens to you and I as well. More on that later. But that's how this goes. Most of the time, when you can find whatever that holy discontent is, whatever that spirit-filled urge, that kind of, man, I've got to do something about this, maybe in your family or community or your personal finances or a relationship that you've got to mend or whatever it is, and I hope that at some point you left last week or were wrestling with that this week of like, what is that thing that God is calling me to do, where I would say, I'm doing a good work, I can't come down. And it was really cool. In between services last week, I had a number of people kind of pull me aside and share some things that they really felt the Spirit of God impressed upon them over services last week. So it was great. And so I hope the same was true for you. If not, continue to pray about that. But here's what I can assure you. Once that happens, once you get some focus, there are going to be enemies and distractions that pop up. Because, as I said last week, if the enemy can't destroy you, then he will distract you. Then he will pull you off course. And so what I want to do is I want to talk through some of these elements of Nehemiah, go back a little bit in the story, and see 3 enemies to traction, or maybe I could say 3 distractions to traction. So 3 ways that we are not able to move forward. So let us pray, and then we're going to dive into a few of these together. God, we thank you for this morning. And God, I pray that you would speak so clearly and that we would listen. God, you have a design, you have a will, you have a purpose for our life. And it is our job to figure out what that is and live it out to the best of our ability. So God, I pray that you would just speak clearly with your Spirit on what it is that you're calling us to do. And more than that, make us aware, kind of chink our soul, raise the flag, send the flare on what it is that is distracting us from moving forward to what you've called us to do. Jesus, we love you, and it's in your name we pray. And all God's people said, amen. All right. So what's happening with Nehemiah, as all of these voices are speaking in, is he's getting what I'll call a fog. A fog that clouds his ability to see clearly what needs to happen right in front of him. Now, I don't know how much time you spent driving through fog, but it is hard. It is sometimes impossible. You know when they measure something in feet of visibility? Not yards or miles no, you can see 10 feet in front of you. And if you've ever, especially in the Central Valley, like Thule fog and stuff, man, that stuff, you can't see your hand out in front of your face. It's crazy. And there are seasons in our lives, and maybe you're in one of them, where the amount of voices in your life, the amount of competing attentions, the amount of competing distractions feel like that. And can make you feel like you're in a fog and you don't exactly know which way to move forward. People bring you problems. Maybe like Nehemiah, people are threatening you. People are just critics of what you're doing. And just so you know, when you start to make changes for the sake of the kingdom of God and you start to live out the calling of God in your life, there are going to be people who just don't get it. Because there are going to be things that you always used to say yes to that you don't say yes to anymore. And they're going to be deeply confounded by that. Why don't you go out with us anymore? Why don't you spend your money like that anymore? Why don't you go on vacation with us anymore? Why don't you do that? Why don't you participate in those conversations anymore? What are you doing? And there's going to be that tension of, well, I'm pursuing what God has for me, and that's bringing this into tension. And these can be internal or external, by the way. You can have the internal fog of all the interior competing voices you got going on. But then also external. And usually when people bring these to you, they claim that they are urgent, but you quickly realize they're maybe urgent, but not important. And there is a difference, just so you know. Things can be urgent and not important. They can need to be done quickly, and it doesn't matter. So this is a true story, which I'm mildly embarrassed to talk about because it happened a couple weeks ago. So I was driving in an area that I don't usually drive around, up in Sutter, and I was picking a friend up because we were going on a hunt, and so as I was driving through, I got off the highway, was driving over, and I was using my phone to tell me the directions, and I was locked on the road, doing whatever this British lady, because mine's a British lady, whatever this British lady was telling me to do. And so I'm driving over, true story, driving over the highway. And British lady says, turn right. She then pauses just long enough for me to turn right. She then says, in 200 feet. I have now entered the off-ramp and come bumper to bumper with a Suddy County deputy. True story. And so we are bumper to bumper in the off-ramp. And he goes, and I go, and he does, and I was like, well, yeah. I mean, like, yeah. So I reverse and pull around, very quickly pull over because I knew the intent was he wanted to have a chat. And so then he came up. Long story short, I had to explain why I was in camo with lots of guns and stuff in the back of my car, driving on to the off-ramp. We worked it out. But all that to say, there was a voice in my head that was very loud. And I just listened to it and didn't actually think about the consequences of that voice. And in the same way, you can have voices in your life that are very loud, that are very convincing. They may know exactly what they're talking about, but they are enemy to your great work. They are going to deviate you to something that is just simply not right for you. So what do you do with fog and voices? Well, you clear it out. You get rid of it. You delete the app on your phone. You're welcome. Maybe there is a physical app like that. You just need to stop. You have so many voices of whatever social media or news or whatever, and it's just in your head so much. Get rid of it. I'll tell you, one of the healthiest things I ever did is I got rid of the social media apps on my phone. I got rid of the whole thing. You won't find me posting on social media. And it was way harder than it should have been. But it was the greatest thing that I ever did. I'll never go back. Or maybe there's some people you need to delete out of your life. There's some people that are just negative voices that just continue to pull you into directions that you just simply shouldn't be. They're calling you off the wall. And you're not strong enough to say, I'm doing a good work and I can't come down. You are, yeah, I'll be right there. So get them out of your life. Keep your eyes down and keep moving forward. So let's continue with the story. I'm going to go back a little bit and jump over a section that I I just simply skipped last week in chapter 5, verse 1. Now there arose a great outcry of the people and of their wives against their Jewish brothers. So, infighting. For there were those who said, with our sons and our daughters we are many, so let us get grain that we may eat and keep alive. There were also those who said, we are mortgaging our fields, our vineyards, and our houses to get grain because of the famine. And there were those who said, we have borrowed money for the king's tax on our fields and our vineyards. Now our flesh is as the flesh of our brothers, our children are as their children. Yet we are forcing our sons and our daughters to be slaves. And some of our daughters have already been enslaved, but it is not in our power to help it. For other men have our fields and our vineyards. I was very angry when I heard their outcry in these words. I took counsel with myself, and I brought charges against the nobles and the officials, and I said to them, you are exacting interest from each from his brother. and I held a great assembly against them, and said to them, we, as far back as we are able, have brought back our Jewish brothers who have been sold to the nations, but you even sell your brothers that they may be sold to us. They were silent and could not find a word to say. So, here's what's happening. They are experiencing a fire. So you have fog, but then there is fire. And this fire started small. It was an internal little bickering of there were some ladies who had some problems with some dudes. That's how it started. So not uncommon as we have today, right? People be having problems. Fine. But next thing you know, Nehemiah blinks and they're selling each other into slavery. A fire that starts small, and we know this all too well here in California. If you do not deal with a fire quickly and you just let it go, it will spread and create destruction more than you could ever dream. Fire has this unique ability to take possibility and make it impossible. Fire has the ability to take what could be and turn it into nothing. And we are so prone to ignore those types of distractions in our life. I mean, because think about it. To Nehemiah, the fact that a few ladies don't get along with a few dudes, who cares? I'm building a wall. The fact that you two don't get along, not really my problem. I don't really care. Can you still move rock over here for us? Yes? Great. Pick up rock, right? Because the mission goes forward. We got stuff to do. But Nehemiah realized that once the wall was built and all the external stuff was done, now you're just left with internal problems. Now you have a wall built. Sure, you're protected from the outside, but you're going to crumble from the inside. You're going to collapse the whole thing. You and I are so prone to just keep going and ignore the fires around us. The things that are very, very clearly saying, I need to be dealt with. This is a problem. This needs to change. But we don't want to change it. We don't want to do anything. I was watching this video a while ago about Mercedes and how they built into kind of the empire they are. And one of the interesting things that I saw was in one of the Mercedes manufacturing plants, I forget where it is, somewhere here in the U.S., they have this massive assembly line, like just insane, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of little stations that go all around this factory and then across and into another factory. It's just crazy. And along the whole line, there is a cable, a red cable that goes from start all the way to finish. And the idea is, if I'm at step 7 of 400 and something goes wrong, what am I supposed to do? Just go, well, I hope that resolves itself, which it won't, and you'll create a defective car and it could cost someone their life. Or you go, this needs to change. Something needs to happen. And so what they do is they tell them, if that happens, yank the red wire and the whole thing will come to a halt. And the interviewer was like, wow, that's crazy. You entrust a multi-billion-dollar empire. I mean, you're cranking through millions of dollars a day to operate this thing. You're entrusting all that to just some lineman to yank the thing? Like, that's putting a lot of pressure on them and putting a lot of, like, I'm surprised you give that authority over. And he said, oh, no, you have it all wrong. He said, the work is not in getting them not to pull it. The work is getting them to pull it. The work is to convince them that if something goes wrong, you have to pull it. Because everyone's natural instinct is, I don't want to cause a problem. I don't want to create a scene. I don't want to yank and then have everyone go, who pulled it? I was on a roll. Right? Now we're not going to get out of here, right? And now everyone's looking at you and you're like, you're the reason that the whole plant slowed down. And so we actually have to incentivize people to pull it. even though they know that there's a world where someone's life could be on the other end of that production line. If they don't pull the rope, they won't do it. And you and I are the same way. We don't want to put fires out. Why? Anyone here ever used a fire extinguisher? They're real messy. They go everywhere. And I'm telling you, some of you, this may be the only thing that you hear this morning. You have a fire in your life and you need to do the work to put it out. And it's going to be messy. Yes. But not wanting to deal with the mess is not a reason not to pull the handle on the fire extinguisher. And how many of us have things in our life where a fire is burning and we're holding a fire extinguisher going, yeah, but it's going to be messy as the fire just grows and grows and grows. And you're like, yeah, but I mean, it's going to get everywhere. And then it grows. And now your whole house is on fire and you're holding a little fire extinguisher going, I should have put that out. Yes, dealing with internal conflict, dealing with family members, dealing with issues, dealing with, and especially as we come up to with the holidays, I'm going to have to deal with that. Yeah, you can just keep kicking that can down the road, or you can just have a conversation and put the fire out. Because leaving a fire going sets fire to all the possibility. If Nehemiah had just let this go on and say, that'll resolve itself, I'm more of a builder, less of a counselor, then it would have collapsed the whole thing. Excuse me. But instead, Nehemiah comes down and has the hard conversation. And he says, hey, listen, for as far back as I can see, the people of God have been enslaved. We've come out of that twice. And now you're putting each other back into it? Enough. And do you think there was some ramifications to that? Oh, you bet. It comes here in a minute, as we were talking about last week, of the threats and the rumors, and that's where that came from. They just wanted to get back at him for doing that. They were pissed that he went and put out the fire that they had to deal with. But if it's not fog and it's not fire, there's a third one, and we see it in Nehemiah chapter 4. We'll go back just a little bit further. I'm working the opposite direction today. It's kind of a weird situation. You just have to trust me. It's all going to come together. Nehemiah chapter 4, verse 7. But when Sanballat and Tobiah and the Arabs, so if you are hearkening back to last week, these are the same people who were causing problems, and the Ashdodites, which is weird, heard that the repairing of the walls of Jerusalem was going forward and that the breaches were beginning to be closed. They were very angry, and they plotted together to come and fight against Jerusalem and to cause confusion in it. And we prayed to our God and set a guard as a protection against them day and night. In Judah it was said, the strength of those who bear the burdens is failing. So this is the report to Nehemiah. The people are not well. There is too much rubble. By ourselves we will not be able to rebuild the wall. We got a problem, Nehemiah. There's too much rubble. There's too much work. There's too much stuff to be done. The burden is becoming too great. Was that the issue? No. Fear was the issue. Fear was the issue. It is the issue behind the issue. Now, was Nehemiah nervous? Was Nehemiah afraid? No. But some of his people were. He was making progress. They were making progress. But that progress brought threats. Threats of death. And so in response to that threat of death, the people responded with an excuse. This is hard. And so Nehemiah pushed back and was like, I don't see that. It's really hard. What are you even talking about? And he got to the excuse behind the excuse, or the reason behind the reason. And we see it in verse 11. And our enemies said, they will not know or see till we come among them and kill them and stop the work. Oh, that's what was happening. You were afraid. You were terrified that you were going to die. You weren't afraid of the work. You were afraid of the threat. And so instead of just dealing with the threat, you gave an excuse of the work. Our culture's in a unique space where our anxiety about our fears continues to grow. Notice I didn't just say our fear. It's even more removed. It's anxiety about a fear. And so we're emotion stacking, but that's a whole nother thing. And so we have this really interesting thing going on. And it is really poignant. If you're paying attention to what's going on in our culture, this is really poignant amongst our youth. This is like a really big deal. But it happens with us as adults as well. You have a fear of missing out. You have a fear of not being enough. You have a fear of your plans or your thoughts or your hopes or desires not working out. You have a fear that the things that you believe that God is calling you to won't actually come to pass, and it just cripples us. And one of the primary reasons it does is because you and I believe a lie, and this is becoming more and more true the younger people get. And here's the lie. If you want to make someone feel safe, then you need to protect them. And that is a lie. That is not true. Pretty much every science, psychology, all would disagree with that statement. And why is that a lie? Well, because when you are an adult and you go see a psychologist or a doctor or someone to deal with a fear, you know what they don't do? They don't say, okay, well, let's set up a bunch of systems and boundaries in your life to never deal with that fear. They never say that. What do they say? Okay, well, you're afraid of snakes? Yes, I am. Okay. Then let's get some rubber snakes, and we'll just kind of, and then we'll get a snake and we'll put it way over there. And then we'll take a snake and we'll put it over here, and then right there, even the idea, right? And it's voluntary exposure. And you expose yourself to the things that make you afraid to find out that they're really not worth being afraid of. And in many ways, that's why we as a people are becoming more and more fragile. We are an incredibly fragile and getting more fragile as a culture. Parents, if you want to build resilient kids, don't protect them, expose them to stuff. Put them in difficult. Now, don't be reckless. I don't want emails being like, I put my kid on the roof of my car and I don't understand. No. Make sure it's relatively safe but put them out there. One of the phrases I have for my kids, and they'll tell you if they were here, one of my core values for parenting for me is I want my kids to be comfortable being uncomfortable. So I routinely put them in uncomfortable situations. I routinely make them feel like they don't know what to do. And they get nervous and anxious, and I go, cool, figure it out. And then I help them figure it out to build resilience. And we're soon going to find a generation that doesn't know how to do that. And doesn't know how to solve problems, and doesn't know how for things to not go right, or to not have mom or dad swoop in and fix the problem. And it's going to be a wild time. Buckle up. But here's what Nehemiah does. And I want you to see this because this can help reframe our fear. Watch what Nehemiah does. So after all this craziness, now everyone's freaking out, everyone's nervous, everyone's so like, oh, what are we going to do? I think we should just stop. The rocks are too heavy. And he pulls everyone together, and in verse 14, and he says, and I looked and arose, and I said to the nobles and to the officials And so the rest of the people, so he gathers everyone together and he says, do not be afraid of them. Those making the threat, Sanballat, Tobiah, all of them. Do not be afraid of them. Remember the Lord, who is great and awesome, and fight for your brothers and your sons and your daughters, your wives and your homes. He says, all right, everyone gather together. If you want someone to be afraid of him. God has way more control than those three. He is way more powerful than the thing you think you're afraid of. You want to place your fear in something? Place your fear in your God. Place your fear in not living out that burden that he's placed upon your soul to do something for the sake of God. And so he reminds us, usually before you lose your way, you lose your why. You lose why you're doing what you're doing, and then very quickly you end up losing your way. And so he's reminding them of their why. I remember when we started on this journey to plant Catalyst, I was confident. We'll put it that way. It's a nice way to say it. And that confidence very quickly got diminished by this beautiful thing called reality. And recognizing that things may not go exactly as I had thought or I had planned. And so I had this very unique opportunity to fly to Denver and spend a week in Denver with some guys who had walked this road before and were very experienced when it came to starting churches. And one of the things that I realized when I was there was at the end of the day, I was so afraid. And I wasn't afraid of following after God. I wasn't afraid of the sacrifice. I wasn't afraid of what people might say. I wasn't afraid of any of those things. What I was afraid of is it not working. And I was afraid of failing. And then whether people ever said it to me or not, feeling that for the rest of my life, I was a failure for God. Because they don't write a lot of stories about failures for God. Not a lot of people are like, did you hear about, Billy? What a failure for God that guy was. Yeah. Like no one says that. And so I was sitting in this room in Denver, and the speaker got up and he said, you know what responding in fear is? And I said, no. And he said, it's the ability to sense what God is doing and respond appropriately. And I said, and he goes, no, and. I said, right, but you left out the completion part. Like you sense what God is doing, you respond appropriately, and it works out. And he goes, no, I didn't. I mean, yes, I left it out, but that was very intentional. Because if you sense what God is doing, you respond appropriately, you leave the results to God. You're being afraid of something that you can't control and you don't understand. So why are you allowing fear to cripple moving after God? And it was being out in Denver, while beautiful and really cold. It was a very powerful thing, and I would say the same thing to you. And so in the same way that guy helped me kind of work this out, what do you need to do with fear? You need to root it out. You need to figure out, understand, realize what it is actually rooted in, because your fear of why you won't move after God is rooted somewhere. If you dig down deep enough, it's in something. Mine was in a fear of failure. Yours could be in 100 different other things, but it's rooted somewhere. You got to root that out. In the same way that Nehemiah said, all right, hey, I'm going to take a collective root grab and rip it out. You're all afraid of death. Let's get rid of that. Let's be afraid of God, who actually controls life and death. And then let's move forward. So, 3 questions as I close. What is clouding your view? What is threatening your vision? And what is paralyzing your will? What is clouding your view? What is threatening your vision? And what is paralyzing your will? Because there are those distractions that need to be cleared out, ripped out, moved out, so that you can get to that same place like Nehemiah, because I believe every single one of you here, you are doing a good work and you can't come down. There's something that God has called you to do. It is your good work. I can't do your good work. You can't do mine. You have a good work that needs to be done by you. Because if no one else does it, then it ain't going to get done. So you need to do your good work, and you can't come down. But not if you don't understand what's standing in the way and do the work to root it out. Amen? As we close, we're going to respond as we always do. We have a communion table back there and right over there, and I would encourage you at any point in time to partake in communion as we sing and respond with these songs together. We're going to have members of our prayer team over here, and so at any point in time, if you would like to receive some prayer, please, by all means, take a few moments and head over, and they would love an opportunity to pray with you for whatever you got going on in your life. And as always, we will stand and sing together these songs of worship. So would you stand with me? God, we thank you for placing the burden on our lives to step boldly into the things that you've called us to do, to know that we are doing a good work and we can't come down. God, I'm rebuilding my family. I can't come down. God, I'm rebuilding these habits. I can't. God, I'm rebuilding my family. I'm rebuilding this relationship. I'm rebuilding my finances. I'm rebuilding my reputation. I'm rebuilding. And I need your help to see the distractions that get in the way of that. And we would be resolute to not come down, not because we fear failure or fear the cries or the rumors or the threats from other people or situations, but because we know that you are the God who rules it all. We want more than anything to follow after you. Jesus, we love you. Thank you for this moment, this challenge, and pray that we would step boldly into it. And it's in your name we pray. And all God's people said.